Hello everyone. We'll give a few minutes for folks to get into chat if they so choose, once they see we're going. Hello, Rainy. You'll forgive me, I am extremely nervous tonight. I think this is the first time in 4 years that I've experienced stage fright. Hey, Jay. So yeah, launch party. Why not? Hold on just a second. Irene, hi! I have been keeping very close tabs on your review, because I'm very interested in what you have to say. I'm also extremely nervous. It's the first time I've had anything I've written be reviewed by someone, so yeah. Ah, Boldy plush, I see. Thank you so much, Irene. I appreciate that like you wouldn't believe. I really, really hope people join the chat in, like, droves. Because I want to talk about this a lot. I hope the review won't be frustrating. Oh, it's fine. People got stuff to do. Part of the whole point of doing this tonight is just because, like, Twitch VODs. You know, I want people to be able to come back and rewatch it so that they catch bits. And eventually I'll put it on YouTube as well, once my brain starts remembering things like that. Not even 10 minutes in and I'm already dying. Ugh, it's fine. We're fine. But yeah, a bit of background on me. I have been a musician for half of my life, a performing stage musician. It's been a long time since I experienced stage fright, and it is kicking me in the teeth tonight, let me tell you. So, to jump right into things, I launched Aether, my deck-based fantasy RPG. Jules, thank you for the follow. I do hope I see you in chat, because I know you've been wanting to get as much attention on this as possible, or get eyes on it as much as possible. Also, this should work. You'll all be able to find links to the game and various other things via that card link, including where to buy. Last I checked, the itch page for it still has 5 community copies available, so if anyone wants to go nab those free copies, you are more than welcome to. Some good news so far. I launched Aether as of like 12:30-ish last night on itch and my Ko-Fi page, and I've already had a good number of sales and a really good number of the community copies that I started out with going out, and I'm so excited for it. I've handed out the game to a few people myself, including Irene, who joined us in chat, who's being very kind and doing me the big favor of a review over on Twitter. And yeah, I want to talk, I actually have notes here because I knew I would want to talk about a bunch of things with all of y'all. First off, I just kind of want to talk about the game and how it started and where it's been, and then we'll move into the PDF in a little bit, if that's alright. And if at any point y'all have questions, drop them in chat. This is as much a Q&A as it is me just showing off the PDF to y'all. So, let me grab my handy dandy iPad over here, get my notes. So, basically, I started writing Aether as it's gone through a couple different modes. It started out when I was trying to fix D&D vehicle combat, and I had a couple ideas there for like a trade system. It was specifically regarding airships, so there was ideas for a trade system, ideas for how to do like crew hit points and things like that that wouldn't work in D&D. It's just not structured for it. I was playing a much looser game than D&D allows for. So that happened, and then I stopped playing D&D due to personal reasons regarding the company, as many did a couple months back. And then I sort of started sitting there, and like before I stopped playing D&D, there was a lot I was not satisfied with gameplay-wise, there was a lot I wasn't satisfied with company-wise. And I started thinking that I could just do it. I am a master's student in creative writing. If I couldn't write something half decent, then I wasn't trying hard enough, frankly. So I started tinkering with ideas, and it started out with a lot of influence from Tidebreaker by Nick Butler, which is a dice pool game that is very heavy on player choice. And I had gotten to playtest early bits of Tidebreaker, and I really, really loved what it was doing with character creation and player choices. I loved the fast pace of it, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. There were elements of games that I loved. You know, I loved the map-based combat from D&D. I actually enjoy that tacticality to it, because I'm someone who enjoys, you know, turn-based strategy video games and things like that, which were a big influence on this. I loved how Tidebreaker did movement. I got to experience a little bit of Bolt, and I believe Ajay is in chat this evening, creator of Bolt, and I got to experience kind of the lighter, more like consequence heavy side of narrative play that could come along with Bolt, surprisingly enough, and its quicker combat, and just a lot of different things. The main influences are easily Bolt, Tidebreaker, and Mnemonic by D. Pennyway. And Mnemonic inspired Aether's character creation through and through. It focuses all on questions and answering questions, which we'll get to in a bit. But the big thing that pushed me to what Aether is now is I handed my home group a system that was dice pool based, that was all about like mixing and matching status effects and abilities and all this stuff. And one of my players told me that it was too complex, that they couldn't wrap their head around. And it was a solid piece of feedback, and what it did is it actually pushed me towards some problem solving that I had to deal with, which mostly revolved around, like, I wanted it to be selectively complex. I didn't want the complexity to be a barrier to entry. I wanted players to be able to choose how much of the game they engage with. And I wasn't able to do that with the dice pool system, so I started playing around with cards. I had thoughts on doing this system where card suits determine different actions. And it was originally going to be a one-pager, and then I started tinkering with it. And I started tinkering with it as a way to solve problems for the dice system, you know, transfer the solutions over if I could. And then the card system just worked better. So here we are. And that's the story of how this game kind of got off the ground. And then I started tinkering with it, yeah. It's one of those things where, like, I was trying to apply some lateral solutions, and the solutions were working in the cards better than they were in the dice. And there were certain things that I just couldn't force in the dice either. And then there came up questions like, I've been learning a lot about accessibility lately. I've been trying to read up on it. And I realized that to a degree, decks of cards are more accessible cost-wise, are more accessible reading-wise, because there's braille decks of cards available, and there's large text cards available. And while the dice industry has grown by leaps and bounds, and dice are sort of indicative of tabletop RPGs right now, a deck of cards just does a lot of things and is a modicum more available than dice. And to me, a big thing about this product has always been since it became a product in my head, has always been keeping the cost for players low. Like, I don't want cost to be a barrier to entry for this game, the same way I don't want complexity to be a barrier to entry for this game. And I don't want discomfort to be a barrier to entry for this game. Juno, thank you for the follow. I hope you enjoy the chat. There's going to be a lot of me talking at people once we get into rules stuff. Feel free to drop questions in chat. If you would like to find the game, Juno, you can use my card link, and you'll have two options using Ko-Fi or Itch. There might even still be community copies left if you'd like a free one. So, as I was saying, I don't want cost to be a barrier to entry. I don't want complexity to be a barrier to entry, and I don't want discomfort to be a barrier to entry. Irene has been very kindly doing a review so far, and it has brought a broad smile to my face to see how much enjoyment there has been in that thread of the safety toolkit and things that I've put in, including the introduction and all that stuff, that focus so heavily on communication. Because I just... honestly, I have the performer and the GM in me has a deep-rooted desire to make it so that anyone could sit at my table and be comfortable playing the game. I know that's not possible logically, but that is very much the core of where all the safety tools and the intro and all the talk of communication comes from. Like, that's it. I want people to be happy and enjoy coming to my table. I wrote this game as if I was running it for the person reading it. Plain and simple. Now, when it comes to making the game, there's something I want to talk about, and it's licensing and business model. And this is something I want to put up front for the sake of transparency. I've talked a little bit about it on Twitter, and I just want people to be aware of the direction I'm taking, money-wise and just general product planning-wise. So, I've got a couple of personal rules when it comes to making money off this. The first one being, I sat down a couple months back and I wanted a way to make money off my product without making money off of anything that people make for it that I don't have a hand in. Otherwise saying, I didn't want to stick my nose into other people's projects. I didn't want to have to deal with IP rights. I didn't want to have to deal with any of that. To that end, the entire game, all of the core text for the game is under a Creative Commons with Attribution license. Meaning, if you want to make and sell shit for Aether, and say it's Aether made or Aether compatible, as long as you don't use my logo and you don't use any of my artwork, you can copy and paste sections of this game wholesale, tell me you did it, you know, so I can promote you, because I want to know about it. I want to know the cool shit you do. I want to pay you for it. I want to buy things. And then on top of all that, I took it a step further, and I have an entire section in the GM toolkit, or the narrator's toolkit, that is all about building your own stuff. I haven't buried any of the toolbox. I explain all of the math up front. You know, I want people to not just play the game, I want people to take the stuff they'd be making for the game, at home anyways, and turn it into money for themselves. It's not just my platform. That said, my second rule immediately after that I have written down is I will absolutely immediately disavow and disown any products that are seen to be some bullshit. Publicly. I can't do anything about it legally because of the Creative Commons license, but I will shout you down from the roof, from the mountaintop if I need to. Straight up. And this includes a couple things for me. I got a couple personal lines, and I get into the specifics in the GM section. One of them, none of those ism bullshits. If you're pushing some really racist crap, or you're pushing some really homophobic crap, or you're pushing some really ableist crap, I'ma call you on it. I can't do anything about it. I couldn't force you to take it down unless you were actually infringing on the artwork or something like that, or you weren't attributing to me. But you will know my displeasure publicly. And as the creator, I'd like to think that carries a little bit of weight. The other thing, and this is a more like game-specific thing, mind control will never be a thing in Aether. It will never be tangentially related to Aether. It will never happen. Personal rule. Because the only times I've ever seen it used well is in my home game when one of my players used a sleep spell. That's as close as it's gotten. Every other time, charm magic and mind control have come into play. They've been consensual instances, like we knew what we were signing up for with regards to dealing with mind flayers back when we were playing D&D. You know, it brought a sense of horror element to it, but in that game, all of the players knew our lines. We knew what wouldn't happen, and our GM for that game knew not to take the agency away from any of the players, but not enough GMs know that, especially when starting out, to use mind control sparingly enough or tactfully enough to not cause problems. So we are avoiding that entirely. No mind control. There is a telepathy skill in Aether, and I specifically code in that skill that in order to communicate with a creature, they have to be willing at all times. That's it. There are a lot of moments where I say targets, this is a very mechanics heavy game, it's very lore light, and that's because it's a toolkit game. Basically, it's telling you how to run a fantasy RPG as much as it is a fantasy RPG. And most often, one of the restrictions you'll see on player abilities, they don't work against other players. Especially the stuff that is like preventing movement or preventing action. And I did that on purpose. And some people aren't going to like that. And some people will ignore it. That's inevitable. But I'd rather have it there and up front. Now, the last thing, this is sort of a personal, like, ethical thing with regards to making money off the project. I have community copies available through the itch page. So every time you purchase a copy, either through itch or through Ko-Fi, I'm going to go in and I'm going to manually update that itch page to show that you've donated a copy to the pool. Straight up. And community copies have been a thing for a while, but they are deeply important to me personally, because when I grew up, my parents did a thing where they never made me have to worry about whether or not I could afford the things like my hobbies. I was very fortunate that way. My family was very good to me growing up. But the one thing that instilled in me is this distinct memory that I never walked out of a bookstore without a book. I do not want someone to look at my game and say, oh man, this looks really cool, and not be able to play it because of money. I hate that. That, like, actually physically pains me if it happens. Which is why I offer community copies. And not only that, I'm hoping that that community copies pool never empties. But, moving on. We're going to get into the actual PDF. We'll take a quick pause for some water and see if anybody has any questions, though, before we start getting into the actual PDF. Yeah, Jules, there is a lot of potential for consent violation with mind control abilities, and that's why I don't like them. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions roll in, so we're gonna just roll on over. And we're gonna start up this. So, this is how things are. Now, this is not the official cover art. I still have cover art coming for the game. I put this splash page together. Shout out to... I don't know if she would appreciate me saying her full name. Her full name's in the book. Catherine Demers, or Katie, as I know her. Her artwork has made this book worth what it is, in my opinion. Like, yes, I spent 7 to 8 months writing this thing, but without her artwork, I would not feel comfortable charging for it. She made this PDF beautiful. As much as I did layout or anything like that, I attribute the overall aesthetic and look of this PDF to her. This emblem is something I concepted out in a very rough sketch, and I said, hey, I know you haven't really done something this complex before. Thank you, Irene, for dropping that in chat. I really appreciate you putting her ad in there. But yeah, this is something that, like, I concepted out for her, and she spent a couple weeks on it, and this emblem alone is so pretty. Like, I want a tattoo of this, and I might actually get one when, you know, the world's not locked inside. But yeah, so this is what I'm calling kind of the splash page for the book. Once I finally get cover art, the cover art will go above this in the file. So you'll get the cover art as the first page, you'll get this splash page, and then we move on into the book. One thing I do want to mention before we scroll down, though, is when you purchase Aether, straight out the gate, you get this full 180 some odd page PDF, which is chunky for a playtest, I am aware, but I had a lot of very nice complete ideas roll into my head for it. So there is the 180 page color PDF, so you get this all in color, and then you also get form-fillable character sheet PDFs. You get form-fillable creature stat blocks in printer-friendly and in color. And you get form-fillable campaign templates, so for planning campaigns, arcs, sessions, developing player threads, things like that, into story hooks. And you also get a form-fillable party sheet. I designed them all myself. I built them all from the ground up. I made them all form-fillable and easy to use because I want you to have everything you need to play this game, regardless. On the other side of things, the character sheet's a bit long. It's like 7 pages. However, the first page and the last page are like weirdly dependent. The first page gets handed back to the GM after character creation, and the last page is just a variant skill sheet for printing off. But that said, the character sheet is that long because I maximized the amount of room I could make on those pages as much as I could. I like a big, visible, legible character sheet. So that's what you got. But moving on, that's everything you get with the game, and the game is currently $30 US. I will probably maybe put it on sale for Black Friday. I'll see how I feel about it, but I feel like it's worth the $30 even in this form. So, first up, highlight reel. This is the licensing information. It has everything you need to know if you want to make stuff. It also has Katie's Twitter. It has links to everything for me as well. This first page it's golden. I love it. Table of contents. This table of contents is very long. It is 7 pages, I believe. Yeah. 6 pages. So it is 6 pages long, and there is a reason, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, because I'm just going to kind of highlight reel this quite a bit. But the table of contents is that long because I built it in a Word document. And when you build it in Word, you can have all of your headings export as a table of contents that links to everything in the book. So I literally have it set where this entire table of contents is hyperlinked. You can get anywhere in the book from here, which is why it's so long, because every major heading in the game is in this table. I haven't hidden much. I hid a little bit. I hid the heading 3s because, you know, it would have been way too long if I kept those. I mean, right? Like, this is a rule book. It is a reference book. It is meant to be at the table with you when you need it. It is meant to be at the table with you when you're planning for it, when you're making characters. I'm not gonna hide much in terms of navigation. You need that. I'm giving you all the tools you need up front. Also, it gives you a nice little overview of what's in the book, so if you're someone like me who can't necessarily read rules like front to back, you can jump around. Plain and simple. This is the introduction. You can find Irene has already gone fairly in-depth with it. I have some writing that I love in this portion, but I'm actually going to highlight it with, you know, something Irene highlighted, because I feel like she summed it up very well. Irene said that this small paragraph here, actually, no, it's fine. This small paragraph right here kind of sums up Aether. Aether asks you to define heroism on your own terms, which is very important. We'll get to that later. By choosing the evils you'll face. But it also asks you to trust each other and have each other's backs, because no one becomes a hero alone. Set your challenges and overcome. This front lines how much communication and how much choice is important. And you'll find out why later when we get to character generation. So, rule number 1, be respectful and communicate. We're here to have fun and not hurt our friends. Straight up. I frontline it. There's kind of a lot of front matter, I would call it, for this. There's a lot of introduction. There's a lot of, hey, before you sit down to play, before you sit down to make characters, before you learn the rules, here's what you need to know. And it's all in the name of setting expectations, setting tone, and really making this as friendly to new players as possible. Not necessarily new tabletop game players, but players who aren't used to this kind of game, making these requests of them. And I'd have loved to cut it down, but like, there's a lot of stuff here where it's a manual for running a game, and it's stuff that I've noticed other games don't touch on, really, that I find important, that I wished I had when I started running games. So there's stuff here for who is this game made for? There's stuff here for, you know, go through and brainstorm together. Thank you, Irene. I'm glad you feel like there's no reason to cut it down. Like, I feel like all of this is important. I've gone through 4 or 5 different formatting passes, and each time I've been editing and rewording and trying to focus on clarity and make it easy to read. And so few times have I found something that was like wholesale could cut. The Ttrpg safety tools. Y'all, I do not know why people don't hyperlink their PDFs to everything they need to reference when other people have been already putting in the work. I don't get it. These 2 hyperlinks saved me going to build like 6 or 7 different sheets for consent forms and things like that. And they are open access. Like, I was gonna go build a consent form. Like, just link. Just do it. Reference other people's work. They won't get mad at you for making them money, if it makes them money. That said, TTRPG safety tools, these are mandatory. These are not optional. And I say these are mandatory because when you get into character creation, I was very conscious of the fact that the things I ask people to do for character creation set up the possibility for potentially difficult emotional situations. That's it. That's why the safety tools are there. And it's also why the mechanics back them up as much as possible, which you'll find later. So, I go into detail on Lines and Veils and X, N, and O cards, because I always feel like Lines and Veils is something good for pre-game, and X, N, and O cards go really well, 1, with the card theme of the game, and 2, they go really well with the in-game portions of it. They're just easy to use and play, they work well, and all that such stuff. And then we get into, you know, figuring out your group and figuring out the game you want to play. Asking questions like, what types of fantasy do we love? What kind of aesthetic do you want for the game? You know, it asks you to establish some big event and how the characters will play off that ahead of time. Because these 2 things that you answer can set up the entire basis behind a world. And they get you started. Determining lethality. Extremely important in this game because Aether makes a fundamental difference of assumption than games like D&D. In Aether, the baseline is all damage is non-lethal. You have to declare your intent to kill, both the narrator and players. And I say it straight up, Aether's a game about having fun, and sometimes the chance to lose characters isn't fun for everyone. And there's also an entire section on death and consequences, because it's a thing that can actually be mechanized in terms of the consequence for it. Now we choose how you'll start. This is when we get into a little bit of the world building and session 0 materials. You know, there's some collaborative world building. I recommend straight up in this section that each player, like once you decide sort of on the main concept for the world, I say that each player and the narrator should each take a section and develop it. So suddenly, you know, if you're working on a city to start off in, every player takes a district. If you're working on a country to start off in, every player takes a nation, and then just sets up who holds power, who protects it, who undermines power, and what do those with a power desire most or try to keep control of. And there's a reason why I centered these questions on people. It's because Aether has a full social encounter system in it. And it's the one thing I've built that I'm super proud of, because I feel like it was the one thing that was missing from the more combat-heavy games I was playing. And the fun thing is, you don't even really have to do things differently in a social encounter than you do for a combat encounter. They function on the same basis, except what they target is two different things, and that's it. Arguably, you actually should be running them in tandem. You should be running a social encounter at the end of a combat encounter, because the idea of a combat encounter in Aether is that you get their morale to 0, and then you start a social encounter to de-escalate. That's the idea. And then you go into landmarks and things like that. You know, extra questions just help spark ideas. But another fun bit. Other world building resources, and I asked the creator this on Twitter because I was going to go build a random table of prompts for world building based on a card deck. And the same day I was thinking of doing that, I saw Megan Cross's Session 0 world building come across my dash. And I immediately fell in love with it. It is $7. It is a deck-based world building prompt system, and it is wonderful. And I straight up told her, like, hey, can I link to this in my product? Because I was going to go do this work that you've already done, and there's no point when I could just send people your way. I asked her that straight up, and she was cool with it. This is why you link to people's work. This saved me a solid, 2 days, maybe 4 to 6 hours of work. Probably. It's nuts. So, core rules. This is where we get into the fun stuff. It's a card-based RPG. Yeah, I've said this phrase multiple times on Twitter, Ajay. I do not believe in burying the toolbox. If I'm going to make something, I'm going to leave the instructions for how I made it in the thing. Because there's no point in me not. We're a half hour in and we're making good time. So, running into core rules here. We're using cards, and when playing Aether, the idea is you are playing cards, totaling their values to get a number. The narrator plays cards, totals their values to get a target number you have to beat. Whoever has the higher number wins. Everything is draw-offs between the narrator and players. This represents a couple of different things depending on the scenario, but we'll get into that. So there's a couple of basic card actions. In combat, card suits matter. This goes back to the idea I introduced earlier where card suits are tied to actions. Depending on the suit, you can do certain things. That's only in combat, however. That brings the tactility and the kind of action management system that I love in role-playing games into it. There are also certain special cards. Aces are low, so they count as 1, and they cause tragedies, which those of you who are used to more narrative games will recognize as negative stunts or disadvantages and things like that. They are basically just whenever you play an ace during a skill check, you wind up with a thing of, okay, you did the thing you wanted, but now you have a new problem to deal with. Face cards all count as 10, and they all have Cascade. And this is the game's critical hit mechanic, basically. If you pull a face card, you keep pulling extra cards off the top of the deck until you don't pull a face card again, and you add all of them that you pulled to your skill check. So Cascade is where we get into the big swings, which is fun. So you'll get that feeling of rolling a fireball, but just with a fistful of cards instead, if you get lucky. Or if you get clever. And then Kings are very special because they also cause triumphs, so they're just the opposite of aces. So you pull a king, like you're getting a triumph and you're getting Cascade, you just like, you uber lucked out. Fate likes you. So, when you want to take card actions out of combat, you can start a skill check. Out of combat, you don't have a hand or anything, you just play cards off the top of the deck. And you play cards equal to the level of the skill you're using, which we'll get into later. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but it's easier for me to explain it when I'm jumping around. So, as the bolded statement says, the number of cards you play equals the level of the skill the player is using. You can discard cards, which just means whenever you're done with them, they go on the bottom of the deck. And I say bottom of the deck because it prevents you from having to shuffle every 2 seconds. It just speeds up play. You can shuffle as much as you want, really, but it's all for the sake of keeping pace. You can add cards to a skill check, pardon me, spill check. Oy. You can tell I'm tired. Short water break for me to explain. I spent from about 9:30 in the morning until 12:30 at night on the computer yesterday. Yeah, I'm tired. I laid out this game and released it yesterday. Mind you, 4 hours of that was having issues with Affinity Publisher, but... Wait. Anyways, back to the important bits. You can, you have what's called a card bank, and actually probably should reverse the order of these, to be honest. But your card bank is a special sheet in your character sheet where you can mark copies of cards to use for later. Whenever you fail a skill check, you get to mark a card for free. Or, actually, I have this file pulled up on my iPad. I'm just gonna go and mark that. Hold on 1 second. Don't mind me. I'm just editing on the fly. Flip. So yeah, because you actually need to know about the card bank before you know about adding to a skill check or burning cards. So the card bank is this fun thing where you get to stash copies of cards to use later whenever you fail a skill check. You can add a card to a skill check. I should probably cross-link all of this too now that I think about it, but I'll do that and I'll update the file later. So you can spend 1 potential, which is a fun thing, and you can pull a card out of your card bank and add it to your skill check. Plain and simple. It's your way of upping your chance of success. Literally stacking the deck in your favor. You can also spend 1 potential to just bank a card at any point, because you're spending a resource to get it. Potential is pretty sparse. The player's hand at level 1 is 3 for combat AJ. It goes up to 4 at level 5, 5 at 10, and 6 at 15. I use the classic 20 level structure to plan stuff out, even though technically you could potentially just have an unlimited level cap with the way things work. So the reason why I have it split like that is just because all of the monster math scales to player levels as well. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I borrowed video game ideas for scaling monsters. So there's no question of whether or not something is balanced. It's just a question of, have I done the math right? Which is nice. Ooh, that is a good point, Irene. I'm just gonna write that in a margin here. Because hands really only ever matter for combat, but still a good wording for it. It's one thing, I I use a lot of words when I don't have to. I'm getting better at it, but I'm going to do a good editing pass this week on it and just clean everything up. I just wanted it out and in the world and getting feedback. So yeah, you can bank a card, you can spend 1 potential to add a card from your hand to a skill check, or you can burn a card. Burning a card is how you add status effects and say, hey, I want to do this thing that isn't really dealing damage, but is gaining some other benefit. So you spend a potential to burn a card and add an effect to what you're doing. The burned card's value doesn't add to your skill check, you just do it. You can also use this for action fixing. So if you don't draw particular actions that you want in combat in your hand, but you have them banked up, you can spend potential to fix your skills. There is not a skill cap based on your level. You start with 8 and you can just bind your skills however you want or level them up. Nope. It doesn't matter. You start with the experience required to level up skills is a stacking equation, so the amount of experience you need to level up a skill goes up each level. That's how I limited it. So you could potentially have a level 5 skill by level 5, but like you'd spend every point of experience you have to do it, I think. I may have to adjust experience rules a little bit, but that's one thing math-wise that I can't quite get without playtesting, unfortunately. So yeah, some other things you can do, you can cascade, you can stack cards. So for certain magical abilities, this is an overcharge. You take a single suit of cards in your hand and you set them aside. It's also for like power striking and stuff like that. You set them aside, you can't play that suit until the stack is used, but you can add that suit to your stack each turn and just unleash it whenever you want as a skill check. The downside is every time you take a hit, 1 card gets pulled out of the stack while it's active. So that's your concentration and your overcharge stuff, which is fun. And then you can set cards, which is literally, haha, you've activated my trap card. And I love it. It's such a... this mechanic makes me happy. It's literally... Ajay and I were talking about this last night because he live messaged me a read of Aether. I enjoy this mechanic so much. It takes a lot of verbiage to explain, but it's literally on your turn in combat. You do a skill check and you leave it face down. You don't know what it does. You declare what you want the skill to do, and you just wait for whatever trigger you decide to happen happens. It's literally like, this is how you do counter spells. This is how you do counter attacks with melee. This is how you say, if he does this, I do this. And I have people lay it face down. There is no mechanical benefit to playing this face down other than the absolute terror of having to turn the cards over and find out whether or not it happens in a crucial moment. So yeah, you could ignore that and just play them face up, but that's less fun. So now we get into skills. So we've had some mention of skills already. I wanted the card actions up front because the skills rely on being aware of card actions. That's a thing. And skill checks require being aware of card actions. So it does feel a little bit like backwards at first, but I had to go this way so that you knew the mechanics, so that the terms I reference later can reference these mechanics. I didn't like doing it this way, but I couldn't think of another way to do it. So, there are technically 6 skill categories. There's combat skills. So those are armor and weapon skills. In Aether, you do not make separate checks for damage. Your damage and healing is literally the difference between your check and your target's check to defend themselves. So if I play a skill check that's a 17 and they play a skill check to defend themselves that's a 10, I'm dealing 7 points of damage. Clean and simple. Quick subtraction. And the reason why I did it that way is because while I love the satisfaction of a damage roll, I hate doing them. They take so long. I'd rather just have 1 check to determine it all. That's it. That's all it is. The other thing of it is this directly scales because as you level up your skills, you play more cards. At level 1 with a skill, you're playing 1 card for the skill check. At level 5 for a skill, you're playing 5 cards with a skill check. it abstracts the idea that if you're better at this thing, you have more chances at success. AKA more chances to pull a face card and cascade your butt off. Really. That's also why Cascade doesn't have a limit, because if you just want an overwhelming success, you get it. So you have combat skills, which are weapon and armor. Weapons only determine range, or determine bonuses to damage if they are magical. So weapon skills, like you'll find pretty much every skill except like some utility skills and armor skills have a range and targets. All the combat skills basically say weapon dependent. And that's it. So when you write your combat skills down, if you have a weapon skill like precision for ranged attacks or heavy weaponry for two-handed weapons, you just write down the range of the skill as whatever weapon you're choosing as your signature. You've got social skills, which are very important and interesting. Social skills will let you do things like figure out creatures' fears, motives, secrets, or loves. These are 4 NPC aspects that you can learn to gain leverage over them in social encounters. Every NPC has one. Each NPC stat block is split into social and combat elements for that purpose. And the social skills let you do things, especially with their skill upgrades later, they let you do things like declare facts about creatures and just make them true. Within reason, of course. You get to do things like gain bonuses for knowing creatures' secrets or revealing their secrets to them, and stuff like that. Which is why espionage is a social skill and why empathy is a social skill. They also, the other funny thing, you can use social skills in combat. So if you want to make a character that is entirely a diplomat, you don't have to worry about being left out of combat encounters anymore. Because you can legitimately use a social skill to target a creature's morale and just deal psychic damage. So you're literally just breaking their morale with your words. Hello, bards. I have a deep love of bards. I built a whole system for them. But yeah. Yeah, you can browbeat them. Exactly, Irene. I love that idea. The one limit to social skills in combat is that you have to have an understanding of the creature. And understandings are my take on languages. I didn't want them to be that narrow though, so I said, okay, these are combinations of like language, cultural knowledge. If it's like a beast or a monster, it's understanding their behaviors, it's understanding their ecology and things like that. It is enough knowledge, baseline, of a certain people or type of creature that you can effectively communicate with it. So instead of being limited by range or whatever, you're limited by do they actually understand you when you're saying this. If they don't understand you, all they're gonna do is look at you weird and then hit you with a sword. You have utility skills, which are your things like crafting and, alchemy, stealth, that sort of thing. And then you have magic skills. Magic breaks down on its own into 3 separate categories. Arcane magic is stuff that's studied and controls outside forces. Esoteric magic is stuff that is outside forces, but we don't know any idea of what they are. These are like your divine casters, your warlocks, your I made a pact with something in the dark and I don't understand it magics. And then innate magic is stuff like body magic. It's stuff that is tied to you directly. Part of the core idea of Aether is a person's soul holds power. People who learn to tap these powers are Aether born, and those are your player characters. There you go. So, parts of a skill. Each skill has domains, which are sort of just a quick reference for what the skill deals with. It's a couple of adjectives and stuff. Pyromancy has like fire, heat, and things like that. Just to give you ideas of what they can do. Their descriptions build on them. They each have levels, like I mentioned earlier, so it starts at level 1 for a skill and goes up to level 5, and your level determines how many cards you play for a skill check with that skill. The fun part about skill checks, you, the player, tell the narrator what you're doing with the skill, and your narrator determines difficulty based on how well your action, or how easily your action can solve the problem. So difficulty floats based on how creative you are in your application of your skills. I think at one point I had a play example in this that didn't make it through a cut, where if you wanted to use Vigor to jump a small stream or river, You could do that. Vigor is the I am a very active person skill. So that would be like a 2 tops for difficulty. If you wanted to tie yourself to a tree and slingshot yourself across with precision, that's a 5. Straight up. Turning a tree into a ranged weapon, that's a 5. That's hard. But, you know, that's how things go. If you have a skill that can be creatively applied, you can do it. So, the natural sort of progression of things is, like, much more up to the players, in my opinion. And then we have range and targets. Each skill has 4 upgrades, so each time you level up the skill, you can take 1 upgrade if you choose. And the upgrades just change how they function mechanically. They extend ranges, they give you extra things you can do with the skill, and that sort of thing. So it just sort of broadens your potential applications. Range. Aether uses a bit of a mixed range thing. So you have zones, which are for map-based combat, 30 foot by 30 foot sections. So if you want to use battle maps, you can, but you don't have to. If you want to just go theater of the mind and say, hey, my range for this skill is 1 zone, my range for this skill is X amount of zones, you can do that. You just write the range down in zones rather than feet or rather than units. And that's why I have this handy little chart here. Also, 2 range diagrams. So your zone is like anything within a 10-foot radius of you on a map. And then 1 zone away from you is like a 30-foot square. Yeah, and the reason why this chart exists is specifically so that you can write range down in the way that best fits with your brain. And then the visuals are just here for those that need the visual who aren't used to theater of the mind, who need battle map stuff. Because most people will understand this diagram of a battle map if they're used to it. That's all. And they're hand-drawn. You know, I couldn't let this get away without me drawing something in the book. I like to doodle. Also, just the nice little watermark in the back shows up real well on this page, and I'm so happy. So yeah, we're getting into skill check mechanics here. I'm going to breeze through this. The one line I want you all to pay attention to is resistance to success. I said this on Twitter. Yeah, so your zone is, I might actually write it this way in the book as well. Your zone is anything you can poke with a 10-foot pole. Think of it that way. So, like, if you swung a 10-foot pole in a circle, that's your zone. Yeah, go for it, Irene. Really, the reason why I have your zone is just because I needed a way to indicate zone of control. Ah, yes, that is brilliant. That actually has the exact vibe I was going for. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. I can also shorten that to Zoc, which is fun. And I joke, but I probably will shorten it to that, to be honest, for the sake of the charts. But no, I love zone of control because the entire idea behind your zone is just anything you can viably reach. You know, if you have a pole arm, it's anything you can hit at the end of the pole arm. It's just for the sake of range. It had to be detailed. Oh, it comes from fighting video games. That's lovely. That makes me happy. I love influences like that. And you never really would think of it applying in this scenario, but it fits so well. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, for skill checks, resistance to success is the measure by which you decide if someone should make a skill check. And resistance to success is a variety of things. It's like if you're trying to hit someone, how hard are they trying not to get hit? If you're looking for information, how likely is it that you're going to miss important secrets or information? You only ever make a skill check if there is some kind of resistance to your success. And then we get the draw off stuff as well. So when you want to make a skill check, you declare your intent. In combat, the suit matters. So you have clubs being damaged because I just love the idea of clubbing someone in the face. Plain and simple. Anytime you want to do something that deals damage, you need to have a club as part of the skill check in any way, shape, or form. Protection was a little bit difficult for me to figure out, to be honest. At least a protection action. So basically, I have it down to, if you want to protect someone else, you give them a bonus equal to the skill level you're using. For the skill you're using, I should say. And then certain skills like the shield skill will alter that. Movement and interactions are looped into spades, just because they kind of fit together. It's the idea of interacting with your environment, really. So yeah, you can pass items to each other and stuff like that. Movement is also the only one where you don't really need to make a skill check for it unless you're impeded in some way. So if you're just trying to move, you just put the card on the bottom of the deck and you move. And that's because it just makes more sense that way. Like, if nothing's trying to stop you, why bother with the skill check? Just burn the card so that you're tracking the number of actions you have left and you're fine. And then you have magic or extra effects, which is for stuff like healing, status effects, so on and so forth. Anything that doesn't deal damage, basically. Setting difficulty. Everything works on 1 to 5 in this game, including the difficulty tiers for skill checks. So simple is 1, easy is 2, moderate is 3, difficult is 4, and epic is 5. So for simple and easy, it's the idea that, like, you're applying your skill in a way that suits the skill. You know, you have a very high chance of success, so you probably won't even need to burn resources for it. Moderate is like, alright, you have to get creative with your application. Difficult means you're most likely going to require some resources spent, or you risk severe consequences for failure. And then epic is like, okay, you're gonna have to work for this. Triumphs and tragedies is where we get into the fun bit. Aces and kings are very important. This is where you get your mixed successes. So you can... The idea for this game is that you fail forward, like so many other games with mixed successes. You can fail, quote-unquote, a skill check, and the idea is that you do the thing you intended to do, but now there's a new problem if you pulled an ace, or you do the thing you intended to do, just maybe not as well as you wanted, or you get a benefit for it if you pull a triumph. You know, that's the idea. And this just creates some narrative fun, because players and narrators both can pull triumphs and tragedies. And then there's some quick suggestions for triumphs and tragedies. Hazards are interesting because it's basically just an environmental thing you want to do. Like, if you want to light the ground on fire beneath somebody, you can do that. That's all. You know, quick rules. Now we get into potential, which is mentioned for burning cards. Potential is literally, if you've played Fate, it's like Fate points, or it's like plot points. Well, we have a raid going on. Hello, Bree, and all of y'all raiders. Thank you for joining us. Wow. Hi, we're doing a walkthrough of the Ttrpg I just released, and I know quite a few of you are Ttrpg fans over on Bree's server. Ooh. What we're going to do here is, if you want to find the TTRPG, use this link. It is called Aether. It is a heroic fantasy RPG, and it is entirely card-based. We're still going through core mechanics, and I'm probably going to start skimming a lot more because we've only got about an hour left of the thing. And I want to make sure that we get to the good bits. So potential is this thing, it's a point system. It's like Fate points, if any of you have played Fate, where you can spend 1 point. Yes, it uses a standard deck, preferably 1 deck per player, but it was very important for me to use standard decks because I wanted to keep costs low for players. Also, all of the character sheets and everything available for it are already available in the purchasable file, and there's some community copies available on itch as well. There might only be about 5 left, so that's a thing. Resident Bard, quietly wondering if you could play this with a tarot deck. technically you could try it, just might take some tweaking for like the random tables and such, but you could do it. Yeah, it's built for a 52 card deck, but at the same time, the math doesn't really... Oh, Irene, you didn't have to buy a copy? Thank you, I appreciate it. Sorry. You all have to understand, like, I put this game out not expecting it to get any draw or really get any kind of attention that way, so the fact that it's sold even as many copies as it had, it's sold like 6 or 7 copies in this first day it's been out. Because it's only been out since like 12:30 at night. Jay expected 10 people to read Bolt. Yeah, you wound up with a Kickstarter. The Minor Arcana of Tarot would link to the 52 cards easier, but you could also still use the Major Arcana as just pure face cards if you wanted to. That's a thing. And then you just set the highest Major Arcana and the lowest Major Arcana as your triumphs and tragedies. So, potential. Yeah, hi. Those of you just joining, I've talked about licensing, I've talked about some of the core mechanics already. Card suits matter in combat. This game very much has the vibe of like a distant relative of D&D combat with a more narrative-focused and character-focused game that is more reminiscent of stuff like Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse games, if you're familiar. So stuff like Monster Hearts, stuff like, Masks, stuff like Monster of the Week. You know, it plays in that idea a little bit more, in that vein. Potential are your fate points. You spend them to add cards to your skill checks and various things. Potential, you get 5 to start with each session as players, and the narrator gets 5 points as well. If you have lower than 5, you go up to 5. If you have more than 5 when you start, you just keep what you've got. Where's my cursor? There it is. To spend it, you can literally just ask a question of the GM, and if there's a way for your character to find that information out in-game, you don't make a skill check for it. You just learn it. This is specifically to cut down on the I would like to research this thing checks. So you only really have to worry about it if certain information you want to find can't be found easily. You can bank a card, so there's a way to copy cards into your card bank for use later, and then the card just goes back on the bottom of the deck. You can spend potential to play a card from your card bank. Actually, I need to wow, my brain just completely frizzled out. I'm sorry, everyone who is in chat. I mentioned this earlier, like 9:30 in the morning till about 12:30 at night yesterday putting this out. So I'm a wee bit tired. Just a wee bit. But thank you for joining me, everyone. So yeah, you can play a card from your card bank, which adds to the total of your skill check and improves your chance of success. Or you burn a card, which doesn't add to the total of your skill check, but lets you add like status effects or extra things you want to do. You want to shove somebody, you burn a card. You want to light them on fire, you burn a card. You want to freeze them, you burn a card. Don't literally burn the card, just scratch it out of your card bank and be on your merry way. And then you can add cards to a stack. I mentioned stacks earlier as your way of overcharging abilities. You set aside cards from your hand each turn, and you can unleash them all at once at one point, with some other rules going on. Oh boy, here we get into the fun stuff. I also do need to link aspects and such. So in character creation, you're going to make a number of character aspects. You're going to make a destiny, an omen, a secret, and values for your character. Each one of those has a bar that is basically an experience bar that fills up over time. When it's full, you get 2 choices. You can either gain 1 experience point, which you can spend to upgrade your skills, or you leave the bar full until you need to make a limit break happen. And yes, this is very JRPG and I adore it in every essence. A limit break is literally you get to automatically succeed on a single check. No questions asked. When you need to succeed and you don't want any question to happen, it happens. If you have the break available. If you use the break, your bar empties and you reset that particular aspect. Or you can use it to take control of a narrative moment. So if you have an idea in game that you think would be really cool, it turns into a plot point. You can just spend that break and say, hey, I want this to happen. Can we make it work? Communication is really key in this game, by the way, y'all. Like, you have to talk to your players and your narrator. One step up from that are heroic sacrifices. Remember the aspects I mentioned? Well, you have these character values. You start off with 2 of them. You can potentially have up to 4 of them. And you can just take an extra value whenever you level up, if you so choose. At no cost, but I might change that later. We'll see. And your values are the way you generate potential. When you do something in line with one of your values, you fill a notch on the bar and you gain 1 potential. Heroic sacrifices are those moments where, oh god, we're boned, we need to win this or get away. You sacrifice your core values. So, the way this works is you keep the mechanic idea of the core value, so do X thing, gain 1 potential, but the value flips into what's called a curse. So it literally goes into the opposite of what you were originally doing. Anytime you would attempt to stick to one of your values, but you decide to go against it, is when you start gaining potential with a curse. So the example here is, if you value love, anytime you would go to, say, attempt to show your love for someone after making this sacrifice, and you successfully didn't as a player, you would gain 1 mark on your value track. Or on your curse track, really. And it's an interesting way of making devil's bargains. It's an interesting way of saying, alright, I'm going to give up this aspect of my character's personality, something they deeply, deeply care about, and make it matter both mechanically and narratively. That's a big theme for this game, is everything matters mechanically and narratively as much as possible. The variant to that is you give up what's important to you. So say the classic idea is you have that family heirloom sword, let that thing turn to dust and see how far you can go. And that's that. So we're going to start burning through this. Character experience and progression, we're not going to talk about, because this is like most likely to change with playtesting. This is a pace thing that I just can't figure out without playtesting when it happens and without feedback. So we're going to skim through this. Into understanding the character sheet. This is where most players will want to start after reading the core rules. So you have a list of the pages. Pages 1 and 2 are character identity and aspects. Page 1 and 2 have a lot of doubled information because you give page 1 back to your GM. That way they have all of the knowledge they need about your character to go start building plot lines. Page 3 is your combat sheet. So think of like page 1 is stuff for your narrator. Page 2 is stuff for your character experience. Page 3 is your skills in combat. 4 is your card bank. 5 is your inventory. And 6 and 7 are 2 different ways to list your skills. So each page has a theme so that you know where you're looking for information. You know it's on a specific page at all times. They all have themes, because I hate having multiple types of information on one sheet. It's a pet peeve of mine. So your character identity and aspects. Your aspects are your goals, which are basically just like one-off things that you're going to gain 1 experience for when you succeed at them, and so on and so forth. Your destiny and your omen. So these are important and these are fun. These are 2 things you as the player pick that you want to happen to your character, inevitably. I'm going to be changing a lot of the language around these, but suffice it to say, they're very similar, but the big difference is your destiny is the thing your character needs to overcome for other people to view them as a hero. Your omen is the thing your character needs to overcome to see themselves as a hero. So the omen tends to be more personal, the destiny tends to be more community-based. And a lot of the language is going to change to that, because I literally thought of this language today as I was going through things. But you get the idea. Your secret is sort of just a cool neutral between the omen and the destiny. It's the thing that you just want to hide. And then your values are the ones that proc multiple times. They're the ones where you can gain experience fairly quickly and consistently. Your understandings are languages and cultural knowledge that let you communicate with people. They are the way in which social skills work in this game. For staying alive and various abilities, you have morale, which is the game's version of hit points. It is functionally the same, but the reason why it's called morale is to get people into the mindset that it is not always physical damage. Because you can deal damage to people with social skills through browbeating, through insults and all that stuff, and through any social skill really, as long as you have a mutual understanding. Conviction are, for those of you that are used to D&D, conviction are your death saves, except you get 5 of them, and you only get 1 of those 5 back on a long rest, depending. Actually, wait, I might have... Right, I rewrote this. So you can get all of those points back on... you can get all of your conviction back on a longer rest, and you can get all of your morale back on a breather, but if you want to have a bigger chance of like characters going unconscious or dying, depending on how lethal you want the game to be, you could make it so that only players only get 1 conviction back on a long rest. You have defense, which is just how many cards you play when someone tries to hit you, and that is basically the number they have to beat to deal damage to you. There are no separate damage checks, by the way. Damage is the difference between your skill check and the target's defense, or vice versa. So I used this example earlier, but for the raiders, if you play a skill check, you play a 17 total with, say, 3 cards, and I play a 10 total, you deal 7 points of damage to me. And that's why there are methods for you to add cards to skill checks, because that's how you get your critical hits, and so on and so forth. The character sheet also has a point for actions, so when you draw your hand of actions for your turn in combat, you get a set number of them. It starts at 3, goes up to 4 at level 5. You gain 1 card every 5 character levels, as Irene said. You have your potential, your skills, resistances and immunities. It's the same as in D&D. The only difference is that resistances just give you a 1 card bonus to defense against certain things, and they can stack. You have traits, which are basically like your innate abilities. They are things you learned in your early life, or maybe like claws or a scorpion tail, like depending on where you choose to come from or who you choose to be. You pick 2 traits and you just have those abilities. You know, it's that stuff like dark vision, it's stuff like having claws, and so on and so forth. And then you have curses. So if you have any curses that you need to write down outside of like your value boxes, you can write them there. If you ever have more than 4 curses, I really question what you're doing character-wise. Like, that's a lot of personal self-sacrifice you're making. But I'd be interested to see how it goes. So yeah, you can regain morale and conviction, so on and so forth. You have the card bank inventory. These are just explanations of each sheet. And some stuff you can fill in right at the beginning of character creation is this starting stats section. So it's stuff that you can just jot down immediately and not have to worry about. Character creation. Your identity is just anything you feel is important as a way for your character to identify themselves. Name, pronouns, titles, anything you can think of. It's also this idea of like figuring out how they got their powers. That's also part of why there's traits. When you choose your traits, all of the questions following this go on the basis of, okay, when you're answering these questions, why do these questions lead to having these abilities? So there's just a list of quite a few of them. Your story so far. The first page has you deal with your identity, your upbringing, answering a couple questions, your inner circle, your community, and your upheaval. And the reason being is this is less for you and more for your narrator. People don't have to make backstory. Like, there are players who just won't, and that's fine. But what this entire setup does is it takes the stress off the narrator having to go and create everything themselves. it gives your narrator important NPCs, it gives your narrator starting points for plots, and it gives you starting points to figure out your destiny, your omen, all of your character aspects. So now we get into character aspects and the aspect trackers. Each type of tracker has a different thing that triggers them, and you can read more about that here. And these are just a bunch of basically brainstorming questions to get you started. And explanations. For character secrets, I actually say straight up in the book that players should know each other's secrets going in, but characters shouldn't. Thanks for stopping by, Jules. Be sure to check out the VOD when it's available, so you can see the rest of this chat. I hope you nabbed one of the community copies. If not, let me know, we'll talk. I'll make sure you have something because I would like to run this with people. What time is it? We're at 9:17. Okay, we're almost through character creation. So, moving through the aspects quickly. I recommend that players know each other's secrets going in unless you really trust your group. Oh, Jay, you're tinkering with the thread too? Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. I know you did a thread on, what was it, Cyberpunk earlier today too, so you've been putting in that review work, my friend. For those in chat who don't know, Ajay in chat is the creator of Bolt, the big RPG that just had a major Kickstarter and had Bolt Jam for a bunch of hacks coming out. So if you want something that, a game that plays like an action movie that lets you toolkit it any way you want, go play Bolt. Cyberpunk Red. That was, is that our Talsorian? Yeah, that's Talsorian Games, right? Bolt is really good, though. I reference Bolt at the end of this book as one of the major influences on this. Oof, I love Artel. They do good work. So, I have a chart for preset values just so that you know the mechanic. This is more for mechanical purposes, though. If none of these fit, take a mechanic and you can just read through it and see how it works, and you can build your own value, no problem. These are basically just preformed examples for that purpose. And it's random generator. And then we have all the different creature types for understandings. The only one that really has certain rules about it is humanoids. Everyone starts with the humanoid understanding if you don't want to go into building different cultures. But it's highly recommended you don't make humanoids a monolith, because it makes it kind of less interesting. But at the same time, just starting out narrators or, people who aren't as experienced with world building or taking their first cracks at it probably won't have full ideas for culture spring into their heads. This is their way to get started. So I'm walking that line there between you should probably split these, but it's understandable if you don't on first go. Second go, though, you should split them, definitely. And you'll notice some of the creature types are different. So in here, we have fiends. We don't have demons as a separate thing compared to D&D. Undead split into spirits, which are basically good undead, and echoes, which are bad undead. Spirits are helpful things that just hang around that can be communicated with. There are multiple skills that let you speak to the dead. It's fun. You also have dreamkin, which are literally dream realm creatures, some of which are good dreams, some of which are bad dreams. They split into dreamkin and nightmares. Nightmares being creatures that will feed on your fear, and then once you finally die of shock, they can manifest physically in the physical realm. And then you have horrors, which are your eldritch horror beasts, and accursed, which are things like werewolves and vampires, things that are affected by a curse. Now we get into the fun bit. Arcana and Emblems. For those of you that have played PBTA games, Aether has what I've come to call a build your own playbook approach. So for those who've played Powered by the Apocalypse games like Monster of the Week, Monster Hearts, what's the other one? Masks, and so on and so forth, they have preset character templates called playbooks, which you select abilities from. This is a build your own playbook section in which you Like, the game has 52 character skills to choose from. That's a lot, and I know it's a lot. When I originally wrote the game, it had 51, and then I realized I could make a random number generator or a random skill generator if I had one more. So there's that. Thank you, Irene, being very diligent with my socials, and I very much appreciate it. But the Arcana and Emblems are my way of, like, pseudo-eliminating classes, because you can mix and match as you see fit. Each Arcana and Emblem is just a character archetype and a symbol that have evocative descriptions, and they narrow down your choice of skills as a list, so that you can get a certain amount or a certain playstyle. You start with 8 skills at level 1. You set, I think it's 2. You start with 3 of those skills at skill level 2, and you start with the rest at level 1. So you get 3 things you're better at, and 5 things you're kind of meh at. And I do have a plan coming out for how to convert from D&D stuff if you're interested as well. That is a big thing. Variable engagement is just my way of saying you choose how complex your character gets. You don't have to write down the upgrades if you don't want to. You don't have to take upgrades if you don't want to. You can just level up the skill. That's up to you. How you choose to engage with the game is your choice. As a result, these skills have varying levels of complexity. Like, easily the summoning skill, the conjuration skill, is the most complex because it has you running monsters. It has you running minions. It has you tracking other things' stats. But if you don't want that, you don't have to have it. And then we have Hyperlinked Charts, my favorite thing. I am such a geek for Hyperlinked Charts. This took forever because I had to manually link all these, by the way, but it was worth it. So we have 2 random generator charts. You can just pull 8 cards from the deck and get a skill list, which is why this skill list is in alphabetical order across all of the skills and not in book order, because I wanted to make sure, like, the book order is alphabetical by category, but I wanted to make sure random pulls had a chance to get a good mix of skills from each category. So I went alphabetical across the whole book for this chart, specifically for that reason. And then you have an Arcana and an Emblem chart, so you can pull 2 cards, and based on the cards you get, you could be an Animist of the Umbral Hammer. You could be a Scoundrel of the Sable Blade. You could be a Scholar of the White Cloak. And it's just a cool little title. But what it does is it gives you collections of skills to look at for certain playstyles. And you don't even have to take those skills. You can swap them out as you see fit. So, for example, the Animist is kind of your Druid archetype. So they get Hunting, Light Armor, Precision for ranged attacks. Social skills are like Observation and such. And then utility skills get Alchemy, Survival, and Medicine. The Beacon is kind of like your... I imagine them sort of like a Cleric Bard mix, to be honest. In a weird way. They are your leader. Channelers are kind of wizard archetypes. Heralds are cleric paladins, which is why their skills skew a bit differently. The Diplomat is mostly social skills, which is why they only recommend an armor skill for them. And so on and so forth, so you get your choice. And then the emblems focus specifically on magic skills. So the emblems are how you break down your magic. There is a variety of magic that I'm not going to get into. You can all check it out if you so wish. So now we get into skills and their skill upgrades. I'm actually going to dig into the bookmarks, and we're going to skip this because you can read about those on your own time if you pick up the game. We have the basic equipment section. The special thing about equipment is that it only adds damage if you have enchantments. Other than that, it just determines the range and certain effects for your stuff. Also, each one has a wealth cost, so you don't really track currency in this game. You track wealth, which is the point system used for crafting, because there are crafting rules later. And there's ways, like I wrote a way for you to convert wealth, or convert currency from other games to wealth, and what items should be for certain set wealths and things like that. So you can also totally just be a merchant if you want to. It's great. You could technically just cut combat out entirely, use entirely social and utility and magic skills, and use the social encounter system and be a bunch of caravan merchants. You can do that. It takes you kind of ignoring a bit of the game, but like, I'd rather you have to ignore the game than go and bolt on entire new systems to be able to do these things. You know, one of my first planned expansions is, of course, a set of magic items and a set of expanded crafting rules. But, like, the rules are already here. Armor and shields and grenades, elements and status effects and hazards. Hazards are environmental stuff. Elements and status effects are all charts. And then crafting and trade. You know, each crafting skill tells you what it makes. There are actually multiple skills that can enchant things. I believe there's 2 of them, so that's why they're just listed as enchanting, even though enchanting technically isn't a skill in the book. You'll find that under certain skill domains. There are a crafting materials cost and a time cost, but you can spend wealth and substitute wealth in, or sorry, other way around, you can substitute in crafting materials for wealth when making an item. Because, like, you spending wealth to make an item is the assumption of you buying those materials anyways. So if you already have them, you don't need to spend the wealth. And then you get certain effect limits. So the number of effects that certain items can have is based on their rarity, as you can see here, and it's from 1 to 5. Identifying and enchanting uses this scale as your difficulty. So 1 to 5 cards based on rarity to determine effects, to enchant items, to make potions. It's all on that 1 to 5 scale. Quick and easy to remember. So there's making mundane items. Smithing will let you do, like, give permanent bonuses to mundane items and such as well. There's 2 different types of bonus in the game that I should have mentioned. There's a card bonus, which gives you an extra card to play. And then there's a flat bonus, which just adds itself to the total value of the skill. Check. Pardon me, water break. So your card bonus is kind of more important because it gives you more of a chance for critical hits. Your flat bonuses are more important because they can go up to +5 and really make things more consistent overall, basically. So you know, if you have like a +3 bonus, you'll never play less than a 3 on a skill check, or less than a 5. Trading currency, this is just mostly geared towards like converting from other systems that use currency. So if you're not converting from another system, this is more for the sake of like those people that just really enjoy inventory tracking. I know I've had a few players that love that, so. And then we get into session 0. This entire section is dedicated to breaking down what it means to run a session 0 into a 4-part structure. You need time for each player to introduce and describe their character. You need time for each player character to meet and interact. You need an interesting location, and you need an interesting event. That's it. I love 4-part structures, and they come back later in the GM materials. You also make a party omen and a party destiny. These take 20 segments on a destiny or omen tracker. Reminder that you fill your destiny tracker when you pull a triumph, and you fill your omen tracker when you pull a tragedy out of the deck. You can, when you have the party omen and destiny, these act like communal pools for triumphs and tragedies. So if you don't want to push your own triumph, or if you don't want to push your own omen forward, you can sync it into the party omen to keep things at bay. And this is extremely important because the omens and destinies system has the opportunity for players to pick very emotionally difficult things to deal with. You know, it might not be emotionally difficult to deal with when they pick it, but a couple of weeks to a couple months later, when that player's having a bad day and they see their omen bar is full or almost full, and they know that event's not going to hit them well, they can look at the narrator and say like, hey, I know this is about to go off, but can we just not do it this session, please? The omen trackers and the destiny trackers purely exist to tell the narrator when they can use certain elements of your backstory and to give you warning of when that gate opens, so that you can tell other people if you're okay with it. Communication is everything. So, playing Aether, we get into some basic stuff, really. It's stuff for new GMs and new players. For anyone who's played TTRPGs, you have seen this formula. You've seen the sandbox, you've seen the resolution, you've seen the aftermath. Each session starts with a recap or an introduction. You go into sandbox mode for the players just goofing off. You hit the resolution, which is usually when you have an encounter like a social encounter or a combat encounter, or when things just generally pop off with a plot twist. And then you have the aftermath where you all hang out and talk about it. Now we get into encounter rules. This is fun for me. Social encounters. I've mentioned that each creature has a social stat block. Each one of them has conviction, which, unlike players, so for players, conviction tracks how long you have before you fall unconscious after you have 0 morale. For enemies, it does the same in combat, but it's more of a, this is how many hits they can take or how many successful skill checks they can take before they give up on their position. In social encounters, it's how many skill checks you need to make against them to get what you want. So their conviction score, so say an enemy has a conviction score of 3 and they're a shopkeep, you're going to have to make 3 successful skill checks against them to get the price you want on what you're trying to buy. And then to make it more interesting, there's a Disposition Tracker, which is pretty basic, to be honest. It goes from ally down to hostile, and it starts usually at neutral, and all it is it's your very quick indicator as a GM to know how these creatures behave towards the players. And that can go up or down depending on how well the players do on their social encounters. Each creature also has a fear, a love, a motive, and a secret. Tell the last tapestry, peeps. Go for it, Randy. Once again, thank you for everyone who's joining me. I'm so glad you're all here. And we're getting through this pretty quick. I might run about a half hour later on the stream tonight, just for the sake of questions. But yeah, you get floating benefits depending on how the social encounters go, whether you learn certain aspects like a creature's fear or love. This is really fluid because it's hard to code social interactions. So all I've done here is I've given 4 pillars to build a creature around, and I've said, okay, how the players play on this determines how things go, as best I can. And I front-loaded social encounters because of something very important in the idea that this game assumes all damage is non-lethal. So it assumes that the end of a combat encounter will harbor the beginning of a social encounter as you attempt to de-escalate. But that is a choice on behalf of the group to be made at the table. So, combat encounters. If you've played D&D, you know what a combat encounter is. You play initiative. The one big thing that's different about initiative in Aether is that it's assumed your characters work well together. So, players play their initiative, and then players have the chance to swap initiative scores before combat starts. Just to show a demonstration of you guys working well together. That's it. Taking cues from each other. It's also that excuse for players to be a little bit meta and say like, hey, I have an idea for this thing, can we try it? Really. I love letting people get a little bit meta in my games. Because, like, why not? It doesn't hurt. Might be a controversial opinion there, I guess, but... So, taking actions. At the beginning of your turn, you draw a number of cards. For the narrator, the number of cards drawn is dependent on the creature. For players, they get a set number. It starts at 3 cards at level 1 and goes up by 1 card every 5 character levels. And the card suits determine what you can do. So anything dealing damage, you need clubs as part of a skill check. Anything to protect others or yourself needs diamonds. Any movement or object interactions requires spades, and any magic or other effects requires hearts, as mentioned before. And you can take up to 2 mulligans. So if you get a bad draw, you can return any number of cards you want to the bottom of the deck and redraw 2 times before you have to play. Damage and healing, we already mentioned. It's the difference between the two, between your skill check and the target difficulty. Movement and range is all in 30-foot squares for those who want to use maps, or just one zone for those who want to do Theater of the Mind. There's a handy chart earlier in the book as well, for those that might have missed. You can take cover and make interactions and hazards and all that stuff. These are all minutia rules, really. Fall damage is a very minutia rule, but you'll notice it scales up depending on how big the creature is. So if you could manage some fall damage on a big thing, it's going to hurt. And then you have surprise rounds rules and victory. Victory in a combat encounter happens when you manage to get the other side to 0 morale, and then you have to decide how to deal with them conviction-wise. Are you going to start a social encounter, or are you going to attempt to knock them out, or are you going to kill them? Damage is assumed non-lethal unless you state otherwise, so you have to choose to kill. That is a conscious choice. Which is why Death Comas and Consequences comes next. So these are various options for making a character unplayable. For any reason. Death is an option. If you don't want to play a lethal game, the very simple rule is the player chooses whether their character dies or goes into a catatonic state once they take a number of hits equal to their conviction, after hitting 0 morale. So this is why, like, there's 5 points of conviction instead of 3 when compared to something like D&D, because it's your choice as the player if your character is going to die. The narrator doesn't get to make that choice for you. Even if the narrator says it's lethal damage, if you don't want your character to die, they don't. This is why the comas aspect exists, because your character is still around, your character doesn't die brutally, but they still have to be healed, they still have to be found. So there are skills that can take you into resurrection and skills that can take you into awakenings. What happens is, and this is where things get a little lore based for me, this is the one part where I will leave lore in this book. When you want to travel between planes of existence, or you want to travel great distances, you know, if you want to teleport, you open what's known as a liminal bridge. The space between worlds is known as liminus. You cross that space to teleport. There is a dream realm where dream can come from. So the place that people go when they dream is a physical place. And this means two things. Players who are resurrected, or players who are dead, can be resurrected by opening a liminal bridge to go meet a deity or entity of death, whomever holds the soul of that character before it passes on. This means that you can use teleportation skills to resurrect people, which is so fun in my mind. The other side of it is, if you want to keep lethality down in your game, but you still need a way to make a character unplayable temporarily, you can go through an awakening, where you can use skills like Aether, which is manipulating the energy of a soul, or you can use psychometry or telepathy, or liminence, to delve into a person's unconscious. And you have to rescue them from a nightmare. You have to rescue them from a personification of their fears. For a resurrection, you make a barter with death. You make a social encounter against whatever deity holds their soul to retrieve them. So, you have secondary omens that come in. When you come back from a coma or death, there are potential things you can do to earn a secondary omen, if it's appropriate in-game. And it's just a thing that your character has to deal with, because somebody might be pissed off that you came back, or somebody might have encountered you on the other side and needs your help. Secondary omens. This is why there's a second section on the character sheet for an omen, even though you only make one. The other reason is that if you do choose to kill somebody, you might earn a secondary omen in the form of, hey, I killed somebody's loved one, and now that person is after me. So you have actual narrative mechanical consequences for actions. And then we get into GM rules, and you'll notice we're only on page 137 out of 182. The GM rules are beefy, and I love it, because most of it is dedicated to teaching you not like how to mechanically run the game, but how to plan the game. It's teaching you story beats, it's teaching you structure, it's teaching you how to take notes. I have an entire file in the Aether thing on itch that is just templates for narrator note taking and breaking down your campaign. by campaign ideas, by story arcs, and by individual sessions, and also a sheet for taking character omens and destinies and developing them into plot threads. All of that is included. And that's because I know when I friggin' started GMing, I had no idea how to organize my notes. I had no idea where to start. It was tough keeping all that information straight in my head. I would have loved templates to keep things organized. I would have loved the options. Yes, they can absolutely work as guides outside of Aether. In fact, you could probably like excise this entire narrator's toolkit, barring the creature creation, because that gets a little mechanical. You could take like this entire narrator's toolkit out of the game and just use it. Really. So the first rule for being the narrator of an Aether game, you need to be a fan of your players. Specifically, you need to be a fan of your players' characters. And that's because the narrator's job, as defined in this game, is to establish a safe, comfortable space for the players to explore the idea of heroism on their own terms. As I've mentioned previously, there are chances for things to get emotionally difficult in this game, for unforeseen reasons. The narrator is there to create challenges, but they are meant to be tough but achievable. They are meant to push you to your limit, so you get to feel growth. So you get to feel heroic. So you get to feel like you've overcome something. True heroism requires teamwork and personal reflection. And then there's a section on rules to remember, and the first one is don't try and remember everything. Really, like, there's a lot of little interactions here. I've cut a lot of this game down from what it was, but there's still a lot of tiny status effect things and all this stuff and numbers to remember, and like, you just don't need to remember the minutiae of the effects. You are one brain at a table of preferably between 4 and 6 people. You don't need to remember it all. You've got 4 and 6 people to help you. Calling for skill checks is the one thing you probably should remember if you're the narrator, though. So yeah, triumphs and tragedies, there's full quick rules for this that I should link to in this section. Setting difficulty, as long as you remember that scale of 1 to 5, you can figure out pretty much anything in this game. Really, it's that simple. You know, as long as you remember 1 to 5, with 5 being high and 1 being low, you've got a pretty good handle on things. Advantages or disadvantages, this is just an alternate way of like quick figuring tragedies and triumphs if you're in a really busy situation, instead of having to come up with a narrative concept the whole time. If you just want to say, okay, we need to pick this up, take this bonus, you can do that. It's just a really nice, simple way of doing that for you. And then you get potential too. Next section, rules you can forget. These are just little minutiae things that like I know I'll forget, or that like you can totally put on your players instead of remembering directly. It's stuff like cover in combat, tracking initiative. You don't have to have the secrets, loves, motives, and fears all figured out, especially for simpler social encounters. You know, just make it up as you go. If you know they're only going to encounter an NPC once, don't worry about it. Just, you know, use the random generator on the fly and go with it. Status effects and fall damage can also be forgotten as well. You know? Don't worry about it. You're not supposed to be stressed out running this game. You're supposed to be having fun too. And then we get into running the game. This is the bulk of this section. So I get into, hey, planning campaigns. I get into developing plot threads. The 4-part structure comes back. You have the hook for the campaign. You have the escalation. You have the resolution and the aftermath. Your hook is the thing that gets people going into this campaign. Makes, pardon me, sorry, I've been talking a lot. I have a bit of a weak voice, as one can tell. Thank you, Ajay. Funny enough, just to plug another thing here, first off, to plug that, but also, yeah, I actually got to prototype this entire concept on a game I worked on with Ajay, pardon me, known as Thunderbolt, which is a bolt hack all about being a fighter pilot, which is really fun. we're hopefully going to have news about that soon. So it's going to be a pretty big time for us in RPGs. Yeah, this is literally all of my experience as a storyteller and as a game runner, bomb dropping this on new people in a way that's easy to remember. Like, there is so much of this game that is just me saying, hey, I waded through so much of this trying to figure it out and so much self-reflection on my games. I want you to not have to worry. A love letter from me to you as DM is exactly what it is, Sin, and I'm so glad you said it that way. This is me saying, I don't want you to love this game. I want this game to love you. Really. Oh, Ajay, I'm so sorry. Hold on, I need to unban. And I'm just gonna copy and paste this for you. Sorry about that, Ajay. I need to go fix my Nightbot so that link's gonna be allowed. Thank you for that tweet thread, Ajay. I will have to go read it afterwards when I'm done. So yeah, you have a hook, an escalation, a resolution, and an aftermath. And these go as you expect. Your hook is, what's the piece of information that gets players interested in this campaign? Why do they want to sit down and play? The escalation, or the sandbox, is all that information that you're going to put together to make the campaign cool. The resolution is the big climactic moment. This is going to be where you usually cause the party omen and party destiny to happen, and it's going to happen multiple times over the course of a campaign, preferably. Then you have the aftermath, which is just, how are we going to settle down? Let's talk, let's have fun, let's have snacks, let's figure out what's happening. Now the fun part is, I don't just use that structure once. That structure is the underpinning of campaigns, the underpinning of story arcs, and the underpinning of individual sessions. So that it's easy for you to get used to. And so that once you know it off the back of your hand, you can say screw it and throw it out the window and do whatever you want. You know, it's that thing of like, you kind of want the structure at first until you find your footing. And then once you don't need it anymore, you don't have to use it if you don't want to. But most of this is just kept consistent and kept with the same terms for the sake of your own memory. For the sake of not having to worry about it. That's all. And then some tips and tricks. Planning based on events, planning based on locations, and planning based on NPCs. So either you keep an event, like I break down story hooks as events or locations based. Wow, Jay, I feel really honored, bashful, I guess. I'm so glad I could teach you something about this. That makes me really happy. But yeah, like I break it down as like, if you need a story hook, plan based on events, plan based on locations, or plan based on NPCs. The campaign planner also has sheets for locations and NPCs that have a segment in them for related story hooks. So you can glance at the sheet and immediately know you have a story beat prepped. And then cutscenes. This is a thing I straight up stole from video games. I did this primarily because narrators deserve their moments too. Players are going to have big sacrificial moments. Players are going to have breaks and limit breaks. You know, players have so many ways to take control of the moment and do epic cool things that I couldn't leave the narrators behind. So what a cutscene is you straight out say, hey, I'd like to run a cutscene now, and the players know that this is your moment to go through a thing. However, players are still allowed to interrupt you. That's the big deal. They just have to be communicative about it. They can't just like charge in. Keys to keeping your cutscenes fair and for all involved is to ask them to let you take the lead, to make sure you don't do anything to directly harm their characters or take away their agency to change things. If you choose to have a cutscene that impacts someone or something a player character cares about, open up the chance for them to interrupt using an ability or idea before that planned thing happens. make sure they have that chance to heroically step in when it's called for. So if you want to set up a spotlight moment for a particular player, the sneaky way to do it is you say, hey, I'm calling a cutscene right now. I'd like to take full control. Trust me on this. And then in the middle of that cutscene, you go, hey, I know I said I took full control. You have the chance to do one thing. What do you do? And then the next bit, if players want to interrupt without that moment, there are two things that can happen. If their action wouldn't change the overall outcome of the cutscene, like say they just want to go move to a different part of the room, etc., that's fine. It just happens without argument. If their action changes the outcome of the cutscene, make them aware of that. Tell them that they are going to change a predetermined, pre-fated moment in this campaign. And tell them that if they want to do that, they'll have to fill a segment of their omen tracker or their party omen to do so. So you make another devil's bargain and say, okay, you can interrupt this, but you're furthering your own or the whole party's omen to do so. Just so you know that like you're changing something that is not intended to be changed. You are pissing off fate, so to speak. So there will be a consequence. Narrative influencing mechanics. I geek out over this because I feel very clever. I feel clever. I love it. I'm also almost out of water. It is exactly just for the sake of being dramatic. Encounter planning. If you want to plan a good encounter, you need to plan with intent. So you need to know what the encounter is meant to do. You need to engage. You need to make sure the players feel like it's fun. And you need to inspire. You want your players to get creative with what they want to do. DM Irene, you are spitting into the eyes of God as you walk backwards into hell. That is exactly how it goes for interrupting a cutscene. And then for your rewards, you figure out appropriate rewards of wealth, potential, and experience, and items. And then we get into just the creature creation system. We're going to run through this really quick because it's minutiae rules again that I don't really want to go through tonight. It's the stuff you kind of got to sit with for a bit. But I'll do a highlights reel. So we've got the core creature stats for combat and such. Creatures are actually done in 4... oh, I actually need to go fix this area. It seems my bullet points screwed up on me. That's okay. You need to know that there are 4 categories of creatures. There's minions, which only take 1 hit before they go unconscious. There's elites, which are kind of like your standard, like weaker D&D creatures. 1 step up from minions, obviously. There's lieutenants, who are built to sort of be able to go toe-to-toe with players. And then there's legends, who are like, dear God, never face these with anything but a group of minions. Like, you never want to face lieutenants and legends at the same time. Ideally, I even write in the, I think it's in the Legends stat block, I write in the category breakdown that players should have a chance to remove a legend type creature's lieutenants beforehand. You know, they should be the people that like get assassinated or offed earlier in the campaign or story arc. You know, it's like, imagine if Strahd had like 4 or 5 people who were just like his main underlings. So you have to remove those underlings first to survive, basically. I may also have big plans. If any of you played or heard of Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor, this is my precursor to taking that Nemesis system and turning it into a TTRPG thing. And I'm very excited for it. That's one of my planned expansions. I still have to figure it out, but I have like the base idea sketched out. So we talked about a bit of this stuff for social stuff in the social encounters section. Each creature gets a certain number of attacks, passives, powers, and tactics. So attacks, most creatures get like, each creature gets like a melee and a ranged, and you can futz with the numbers on how many they get, but ideally they have 1 melee and 1 ranged attack, no matter who they are. Passives are passive abilities. They get a certain number based on their category. powers are very powerful abilities like breath weapons, like area of effect attacks, stuff that generally like shifts terrain or can flip a battle on its head, and they get limited uses or a recharge. And then tactics are literally just a shorthand for how a creature behaves in combat. I don't have a list for tactics. You decide these on your own, because they are literally just like, will they attack a healer first? Will they hit whoever last hurt them? Will they do all they can to escape a fight? Like, this is something you kind of have to decide on in the moment and jot down. But it's there to make sure that you as the GM can look at a stat block, look at the tactics section and say, all right, I know what they're going to do next turn. In most scenarios. Encounter numbers. This is something that's liable to change, but it's something I put in here specifically because I had the idea for it. All of the math for creatures scales to players. So as the players get higher in levels, you can have more creatures at once, but it starts with like, if you have a group of minions, have it have a number of minions equal to the players. The number of elites in an encounter should probably be like players -1 or players -2 if you're combining them with minions. Lieutenants should be at most half the number of the party at any point, and probably shouldn't have elites mixed in if there's the lieutenant, unless you're at higher levels. And then for legends, there should only ever be one. You know, and that's subject to change with testing, but it feels like a pretty good metric so far, so I'm going to keep it for now. And then we get into templates. Same information for creatures, just copy and pasted for your reference so it's closer nearby for scrolling and whatnot. Creating NPCs with just a bunch of questions you can ask and answer. Minions, I mentioned minions only take one hit before they fall unconscious. That's to make them easy to run. In combat, minions also only get to move once on their turn and do one thing on their turn. They can do any one thing, but they can only do one thing. So they're super weak. And then as you go through here, each creature template has a morale calculation. Yeah, I need to read that out. I love that section. Emergency minions. If you ever feel like players are going through an encounter particularly quickly, deploy emergency minions and say that they were just around the corner. Or in the rafters. Whatever works. It's one of like 2 spots of humor I have in this book. I love it. So, past minions, each creature has a specific like calculation to figure out their morale, and it scales with the players. Also subject to change to see how it works, but I'm kind of excited to see how it works. So for elites, it's 2 morale per player times the party level, because everybody levels up at the same time. Everyone gains experience when anyone gains experience, which I may need to clarify as well, but... so for a group of 5 players at level 1, an elite would have 10 morale. So it's 2 per player, and then times the party level. At level 5, that goes up to 50. And also, yes, I totally designed these equations to only have round numbers as maximum morale, because screw anything else. Screw averages. I want round numbers. My brain likes round numbers. So that's elites. Lieutenants start at 3 per player times party level, so they get 15 morale at level 1, but at level 5 they would have 75 morale. So it scales very quickly, but that's so that like you have players who are going to get very tactical with the way they do things, and players also get a lot of chances to target multiple creatures at once with things in this game with upgrades. So by the time they hit level 5, they're going to be fairly proficient in what they do. And then players also have all different ways to stack damage and stuff too, so it should be fine. You have legends, which follow the same stuff. The legend template. This template is bonkers. Be kind, be creative, and make sure your players are well prepared if you use it. That's probably a little over the top considering I trimmed back legends, but like they also get the most amount of powers. They get the most amount of resistances and things like that, so... Actually, I need to maybe bump that up a little bit. But the nice thing is, once you have this base structure understood, you can manipulate as you see fit. You're tussling with Calamity Ganon. Damn right, AJ. And then we get into lists. So I went through and I built a few basic lists of creature attacks, passives, and powers that could be used. These are the things that are most likely to get added to with expansions, but for now they're going to stay as they are because I covered a pretty broad basis with the kind of flavor minimal aspects. The idea here is that you pick these and then you flavor them as you see fit based on the creature type and the creature category. So if you know you have an elemental type creature and you pick like the fire element and you get like a light melee attack, you're probably going to hit with like fire claws or a fiery bite, you know, that sort of thing. You can piece all of this information to build the flavor for your creature, and it's kind of nice because if you notice, I've listed cards next to each of them. There is an entire way to populate creature stat blocks randomly just by pulling cards via the NPC Quick Charts. So, the charts here, you have creature category, you have creature type, you have creature size, you have loves, you have motives, you have secrets, you have attacks, you have, oh, did I not put fears? I did, it's just right here at the bottom of the page. You have fears, you have attacks, you have passives, which I will wind up linking back to all of those as well. It just, lots of manual linking. And you have powers. And then a nice little section on creating your own game materials. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you that weren't here, this game is written under a Creative Commons with attribution license, meaning you can make your own shit for this game as much as you want. And if I don't have any hand in it, all you gotta do is say that like any text you've borrowed or any inspiration or whatever, you just gotta like, I've got a sentence you can copy and paste and the license you can copy and paste and you're good. You can sell your stuff. Tell me if you're selling stuff so I can brag about it and be like, hey, look at this cool thing somebody did, because I want to know that shit. I love that shit. If you hack it, tell me. If you love it, tell me. If you hate it, don't tell me. No, I'm kidding. But I also set out a couple general guidelines to help you do things like if you are coming up with new player skills, because that's going to be a big thing people do, I predict, because people love making player materials. I give you the structure I followed for building these skills and all of their upgrades. You come up with a core theme and a description. From that, you jot down a few possible domains that they can control. You come up with mechanical upgrades, so stuff that increases range, stuff that gives bonuses, stuff that increases number of targets, all that stuff. And then you remember the concept of variable engagement when making new player abilities, because different players want to engage differently with the game, so if you stick to the math and stick to your core theme, you'll be fine. It's that straightforward. I can't make this more known than I already have. But there are also a couple of personal rules. Mind control will not and will never be part of it. You missed this part at the beginning, but mind control will never be in this game because it too often just takes away player agency. And it's gross. TTRPG safety tools are mandatory. There's an entire section in this book on them. Use them. And if you put out a product that encourages any of the things listed here or worse, I will straight up publicly drag you with no remorse. I have no fear. I will straight up shame you into taking it down. I can't do anything legally about it if you do that and you follow the licensing stuff, but I will make sure that the original creator of Aether's displeasure is known. It'll be like Gygax walking up and laying the smackdown on current D&D developers in this house. Right? That is how this will go. And that's mostly because, like, I know I'm a bisexual white dude in his mid-20s. There's a good chance I have internalized more than, like, 3 of these things. I know this. And even I'm gonna do my damnedest to follow these rules. These rules are here for me as much as they are for all of you. Because even I need the reminder. This is also why you hire sensitivity readers, which I haven't done yet for this product, but as it makes more money, that is like first on the list. I swear to God. that's on the list. Professional editors on the list. A look-see by a professional layout artist is on the list, even though personally I think, like, despite the errors that come from it being 180 pages long and me being tired, I think the layout's pretty nice, not gonna lie. I really like it. It's nice and easy to read. And, like, artwork, page embellishments. Oh yes, I will fully sick a murder of crows on people. There is no question. There is no question. When it comes to this, I am very protective of, I don't want to call it the tone, but like the atmosphere this game sets for designers. I am very protective of designers knowing that they can make things for this game and they don't have to worry about people being shitheads. Ajay, if you would like to be part of that Murder of Crows, join my Discord. Yeah, folks, I have a Discord server if you'd like to come join and talk to me about game and find all the updates on game. Join me. The card link has a Discord invite. But yeah, I also have an inspiration and acknowledgement section where I talk about the video games I drew on. My home group actually gets a shout out. Some of the people in chat get a shout out as well. Folks, you know, people who've been encouraging, people who have been talking with me about this, people who've been letting me bounce ideas off them at all god awful hours. Like, the people who gave a crap about me doing this get referenced. Because, like, you never really see or get to see designers talk about who mattered to them in the process. And I don't know why. So I said, screw it. And I did it. And then I have links to 3 of the major games and creators. Links to 3 of the major games and creators. Bad Chile, nice. Good to see you. I literally just got to the end of the document. So I am going to take a quick, like, 2-minute break to go get more water. So, Chile, I just finished talking about the game. There are currently 2, hold on, let me scroll up in chat and see if I can find it. Chili, if you would like to hear about the game, both Ajay and Irene, who are in chat, have both done Twitter thread reviews of it. We just hit the end of the book. I will, here, I'll scroll back up to the table of contents so that you can start kind of getting an idea of it. And I will just leave this up. I won't even go to my usual break page. And y'all can just skim that. If someone would be so kind as to fill in Chili about what he has missed in brief summary. We've done a run through of the game, and we've done a run through of my licensing and business practices, which for the people here, before I go get water, business practice. I don't want to make money off things I don't have a hand in, hence the Creative Commons license. I want you to be able to make shit, and I offer a lot of free copies because I don't want people to worry about not affording the game. So there's free copies available on itch. If there aren't, I have to update it to reflect any new sales that have happened in the past, like, 6 hours. So, thank you very much, everyone, and I will be right back once I mute myself and go get some water. Oop. I muted my desktop instead of my microphone. Alright, and I'm back. Thank you for waiting for a second, everyone. So, how's everybody doing in chat? Are you having a good night? I know that was a lot of information. I just wanted to give you guys a run through, and it seems we got through pretty much everything in 2 hours. I'm open to all questions, any questions in chat, if you need them answered, if you have anything that you're dying to ask. Or I could give you a sneak peek. Well, not really a sneak peek because I don't have anything written, but let you know some of my plans for possible expansions. I did mention this on my website in a brief post, but I'm more than happy to talk about what comes next, if that is what you're all interested in. I'm actually going to set this back to the very pretty emblem, because I like it. Or you know what? No, let's go back to the chatting screen so you can see my face. But yeah, if anyone has questions, I'm just going to kind of chill out for a bit. Hit me with those questions in chat, or I can start talking about expansions and possible projects and maybe some possible merch options. I don't know, I'm getting goofy, it's late and I'm tired. I'm probably going to go for maybe another 20 minutes or so. What are we looking at for time here? About another 15 minutes. 10:30 feels about good for me. Get back to my notes over here. Oh my, I have 20 Twitter notifications waiting for me. I'm just gonna not. Ajay, I don't know if you caught it at the beginning, but this is the first time I've experienced stage fright in like 4 years. It hit me pretty hard. It hit me hard last night after I released it, because I didn't expect to have any sales until like mid-afternoon today, and I had 3 sales within like the 3 hours after I released this thing at like midnight. It was wild. I can't even begin to say, one, how satisfying it is, one, how happy it makes me that people feel like it's worth paying for. Irene, don't worry about it. Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work you're putting in reviewing it, and like every little piece of eyes on it and chatter about it just push it so far. And like Ajay, you say wait till people tell you they're running it. There's a reason why I so heavily weighted the how do you run this game section of the game, because all of that information, regardless of the mechanical shit, all of the information about running the game makes you able to run this game tomorrow, and I don't even need to be there, as long as you understand it. And I feel like, for the most part, I've written the mechanics well enough that most people are going to grasp them pretty well. So like, I'm really excited, because I'm excited by the possibility that like this is going into playtesting, and that I will not be the only person running it for playtests. Because I don't want to feel like I'm forcing it on people. I really want people to enjoy this game for their own pure enjoyment of it, rather than for me throwing it at them. I'm gonna throw it at them anyways, but like, you know. Ro, I am so happy you're doing character creation. I cannot wait to see that. I actually do have thoughts of... Irene, your quick scan can understand it? Great. That is lovely to hear. Oh my god. I cannot tell you how much I worried about just not wording things well enough. Ro, tag me in everything. I love that shit. I'm so excited. So this is my main driver for games going forward. I will probably be basing, unless I have a weird idea for like other systems and mechanics, this is going to be my core thing. Jay, drunk you could get it? If a drunk Jay could understand this game, you can run it tomorrow. That's my benchmark. You could quote me on that. Speaking of running the game, I mean, yeah, you've given me the most solid idea for making it easier I could possibly get, and that is just summarizing the names and making it make sense. And the other thing about the zones is, if you don't want to worry about how they translate to a battle map, you don't have to. You just say zones and you run it theater of the mind. That's the reason why it exists. You can just draw out a bunch of circles on a map and say, hey, they're in this, or on a piece of paper, hold it up and say, hey, they're in this zone, you're in this zone, this is how far you have. That's it. It's like, you don't need a full map, you might just need a very slight representation of it. Cheat it. Do what you gotta do. And that's something that I had a lot of trouble with in the beginning, is like figuring out range for a game where I wanted battle maps to be optional. Because I also know that battle maps aren't available for everyone. I know they can be an accessibility issue for a lot of people, and I know that they also have this tendency to swing in the opposite direction of being a wonderful accessibility tool as well. So I didn't want to completely lose their effectiveness for players that need the visual aspect, but I also didn't want to force them onto players who might not be able to afford it or might not have the space. This is the way I figured that out. So, we've gone through the highlight reel. Let's get into future plans. Yeah, maps and minis are expensive. Expensive as hell. Really. Hold on, let me check my shoutouts here real quick. Does not appear to be in chat with us. If you want a good way to get maps, go sub to my friend Josh Valor's Patreon. He's a wonderful D&D map creator, and he puts out a lot of maps. He has like 10 sets per month that you have access to at a $5 tier. Low-key, I exclusively use his maps in games now. It's great. It's wonderful. I'm also in a podcast with him, which you can find here. I am in a podcast with him and Sinziak Beta, who is in, or Sinziak, who is in the chat as well. I'm in a lot of things, okay? But yeah, this has been a big day. It's been a really big day. Gabe James has joined the chat. Hi, Gabe. Or I don't know if you joined the chat, but he did follow. Hi, Gabe. Yeah, I'm in a Star Wars campaign. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a very different experience as well, because it's the Star Wars RPG. Oh, you've been in for a while. Thank you for joining. I hope you like it. I've been following you on Twitter for a while, actually. Oh, Lord. The Star Wars RPG in question is... Lord, I cannot remember. My brain is so dead. Jay, when I remember it, I will message it to you. No, it's not the Fantasy Flight Games one. It's one of the D6 ones. It's Re-Up. It's the revamped version from a little ways back. No, it's weird. It's Ajay, I'm sorry. My brain is not functioning with names tonight. I've spent too many hours on Aether this weekend. Ajay, stop asking. I don't know. I'm sorry. If RPGR is in chat, or if you want to ask over Discord, that's perfectly fine. You're welcome to ask. But yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed the run through. Aether is available for $30 USD on itch and through my Ko-Fi. It's going to be getting some polish and editing updates throughout this next week, for sure. I'm not doing any major writing for it for 3 weeks. Going forward, that's my plan, because one, I need a break. I almost burned myself out the past couple of days, so I just need the time away. I will be planning projects involved with Aether, but I won't be working on them. I'm going to be editing, I'm going to be revising, I'm going to be looking into names to help with the project going forward, because I want to get a couple artists in on here. Again, I'm going to move to this page because I want you, those of you in chat, go follow Katie, please. Katie is like just a gem of an artist, a friend of a friend. I met Katie when my home D&D group and I were doing a podcast way back, and we needed a logo done, and one member of the cast knew Katie as a friend and knew Katie wanted to get into doing logos and graphic design work, and I've had Katie in my back pocket for artwork ever since. Katie did this. I cannot tell you how lovely this is. And there's actually, like, I remember my full concept behind this was I wanted to represent a magic circle to represent the magic skills. I wanted the sword over it because I wanted it to start looking a little bit like an old heraldry or like a Zelda style title screen emblem. And the flower petals behind it are the petals of a gladiolus flower, which when I looked it up, a gladiolus flower symbolized heroism. It was often given to victors as a prize. A bouquet of gladiolus flowers were given as a prize to champions of the Roman Colosseum. So that is the story behind this emblem. It literally symbolizes heroism and heraldry and being recognized as a hero. It's way too much thought into a single image, and I love it. But yeah, go follow Katie. Give her all the money for all the work. She has done multiple variations of this emblem for me. She's done multiple colorways for it. Every time I have asked her to do a thing and I have felt bad about asking her to do a thing, she's just been like, oh, this is going to take me 5 minutes. Don't worry about it. It is to a point where I will not tell you what she charged me. I am paying her double. Some people know this already, but like, I am paying her double for all the work she's done. And this isn't even the official cover art. Let me remind you that this is a splash page I put together with the assets she sent me. She is still working on official cover art. I'm freaking out, man. It's great. I love it. I'm getting this tattooed on me, eventually. But that's it. Future plans for the project. I've got a couple expansions in mind. First one is going to be magic items and crafting. I want to do, or maybe not the first one, but it's on the docket. I want to do crafting and magic items just to expand the crafting rules a bit and have more concrete options for the players to make stuff. You know, if they say they want to make a magic item and they don't want to go through the process of picking all the abilities and stuff for it, just go pick one from the list. So that's one of the plans. I have plans to adapt the Nemesis system from Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor because it'll work really, really well with the minions and all that stuff, the tiered enemy list. And the point of that Nemesis system, pardon me, is going to be like pseudo a world building pack as well, where the Nemesis process is going to be literally like, if you defeat someone, a minion might upgrade to take their place, but it's also going to take this concept of, okay, if you want to fight against an organization or a regime or leadership in some way, or you just want to make big bads who are important to the player characters suddenly have an option to make enemies, like to make these big bads their omen or their destiny. So encounters with these enemies become the end point. I do not have gameplay yet. This literally released last night at 12:30. This is the launch party for it. This is in playtesting as we speak. I've launched this in full playtesting because with the layout it has and the artwork it has and the amount of stuff it has, this is less of a like playtest document and more of a like edition 0.5, if one might. But this rolls into my other plans, so thanks for asking, Gabe, because upcoming, over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be putting out a collection, or recording and putting out a collection of quick YouTube videos, kind of in this style, really, where I just go through the book, and I tell you how to make characters, and I walk you through a pseudo session 0, and I walk you through explaining the stuff to you. Because I know there's players out there who can't read 180 pages, but they can watch a video and have it explained to them. So it will be me talking to people. It will be me saying things. I'll probably even put this up on YouTube at some point, because I don't have anything on my YouTube channel yet. But I'm going to be calling that series Session 0. Just plain and simple. And I'll be walking through character creation and play examples and things like that. So that's upcoming over the next 2 weeks. That's part of the reason why I'm taking the break to just edit and do this, because I want to polish at this point. On top of that, I got an offer today from RPG Hour, a dear friend who is doing things. Yeah, I really want to make this game as easy for people to delve into as possible. I don't want them to feel like there are any hurdles to overcome. That's it. I really want people to enjoy playing it and enjoy running it. So putting out YouTube videos, even though I've never done it before, I'm going to do it just this style, as if I was sitting at your table across from you, walking you through it. With some lo-fi in the background for fun. So Nemesis system, items, bestiary. I'll probably put out some pre-built stat blocks and little bits of lore. I'm thinking like 5 characters per category per creature type. So like 5 dragon minions, 5 dragon elites, 5, build it up that way, because that's a lot of creatures once you're done. And then I have thoughts on a way, or a set of ways, to integrate some of the mechanics with Twitch streams and actual plays. That's a possible expansion as well. So ideas like subs and follows, buying people potential to spend, and things like that. That's probably the least developed idea in my head, but I got thoughts and I want to put it out because I want people to be able to stream this. Beyond that, 3-week break for me. I also have to focus on school. I'm in a master's degree. I kind of forgot to mention, I have a thesis to write, and I did this instead. So there's a good chance I will be releasing this and my first novella, because that's my thesis, creative writing masters, for this year. So I'm most likely self-publishing my first novel this year as well at some point. It's gonna be great. Yeah, novella. This leads me into my other point, is I do have a setting on the back burner for this. And that novella is going to be set in that setting, because I'm just going to say it. We're going to do like JRPG style Sky Pirates inspired stuff. It's fantasy 1930s. It's oh, thank you. I do this whenever I need something to fidget with until I drop it, and then at which point it hates me. But yeah, so there's going to be setting materials out eventually. That's kind of distant future though. I need to get back to it. I have a lot written, but I need to take it apart and rebuild it, just to kind of step away from the D&D restrictions, really. I want to do some things. I want to show people, with that setting, I want to show people how you go from this to like unique lore and world building, really. That's what I want to do. So there's that, the YouTube walkthroughs. I have thoughts on any expansion packs, especially short stuff, being like $15 to $30, depending on how big it is and how much time it takes. Probably with the same basic idea as this, but with different color schemes so that they're at least readily identifiable. I need to be able to hire an editor, and I don't know if I'm going to do like full art versions for this, or if I'm going to just do little icons and like page ornamentations for it and things to just break up the blocks of text, really. I have to decide on that. And then big stuff. I have plans for a stream to actual play in the works. It will be what I am currently dubbing an actual playtest, because we are going to playtest this live. Yeah, that's not terrifying. But I want to, specifically that game, that actual playtest campaign would be streamed or recorded via podcast form for the sake of people getting a look at a couple of designers getting together, playing the game, and tinkering on it. You know, what they like, what they don't like, what can change, what can flex, you know. Give people a window into how designers play, first off, and how the game can be played. But also give people a window into, okay, what do creative minds in the space do to get to a product? You know, pull back the curtain a little bit. And that's terrifying for me. I really don't want to, like, live edit a project. But it's such a good idea, though. Like, I can't not do it. And the other side of it is, I would freaking love to see what a couple game designers do when they get their hands on character creation. Give me a couple forever GMs who, like, never get to play people. Let me run this. Let me run this. But the reason why it's going to wait till after the holidays is because I need my 3-week break, and then I just need time to plan it. And I also need time to get a little bit of tech in, I'm not going to lie, because I have a Go XLR on back order for my audio needs, and like when I start that actual playtest, it is not going to look or sound like a playtest, let me tell you that much. Because if I'm putting on a show, I'm going to put on a show. But that's that. And of course, the problem is, like, God, I would really love to pay people. Frankly. Give me enough money for this game and for other things that I do so that I can pay people to be on an actual play, please. Please. Let me do this. Let me give my friends money. For reminders too, I said this at the very beginning of the stream, but in case anyone who missed it, the breakdown of price. It's $30 USD. Now, mind you, I will full out pull back the curtain on this. I charge USD because I live in Canada, so that $30 converts into 30% more money for me. I make more money charging USD for my stuff than I do charging my home currency. And that's just smart business. If any of you, like, general advice, if any of you are freelancers and in the chat and you can do it, charge in USD. Yeah, F's in chat for Canadian dollars. Seriously. It's like, I checked today and the exchange rate is like 36 cents on the dollar today. Yeah, it's a lot. But it's great because it gives me more to work with. The way I'm splitting this right now is that 70% of the whole thing, so 20 out of that $30 USD, goes back into funding more stuff for this. I only take $10 out of it for my own paycheck, and that's because I've spent 8 months on this, and I deserve a little bit of a paycheck. Especially since it's not just a Word doc, like it is a pretty PDF with some art and stuff like that, so it's worth the $30. You know, I deserve that much, and before anybody asks whether or not Katie is getting a revenue share, I have fully, like, I'm paying her double, and that's on top of her charging me for commercial rights for the artwork, so, like, she is going to be completely paid up in full. And I am more than likely, her willing is going to, or her willing, she will be basically on retainer as an artist for me for future projects, because I can't not look at this and the artwork proofs that I've seen. Like, I can't just not let that kind of talent go. Speaking of, I wonder if she's been in chat this whole time lurking and just hearing all this. Nope, we're good. We're good. We're safe. But yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to build up this project. I want it to be my main driver. I want to give all the support I can to this project. And I hope you do too. I hope you like it. I hope it becomes something different. I hope it's something enjoyable. If any of you playtested, if any of you have thoughts, tag me on Twitter, talk about it. Please, get eyes on it. Join my Discord. Come talk with me about it. Let me geek out about it to you. Let me hear you geek out about it. I thrive for that. Tell me your ideas. I want to encourage you. Come hang out. Thanks for joining me, everybody. This has been one of the most stress-inducing days of my life. And it's just because I'm a fairly high-anxiety person. And I had no idea how it would go. And, I mean, honest to God, I highly doubt I'd be getting this much traction with it without Katie's artwork. Because her artwork is the post that really drew the attention on Twitter. And I can't say I appreciate it enough. I shall attempt to show my appreciation through content. And I hope you all enjoy it. If you have any questions, hit me up. Join the Discord, talk to me there. Ask me on Twitter. But I think we're going to call this a night, folks. Oh, possible merch plans, actually. Hold on. I forgot 2 things on this list. So post-holidays, we have the streamed game. Expansion packs $15 to $30, depending on like how big they are and how much work goes into them. Most likely 15, because like they're gonna be shorter than this for sure. Merch. I just kind of want to throw this idea out there. Would there be interest in, now that you all have eyes on the game, 1, custom decks of cards, ideally with X, N, and O cards in the set, so that they're a physical thing players can use, but like custom cards with this emblem on the back. Hold on, I need to change back to the... like custom cards with this on it. That, and also Arcana and Emblem pins, you know, character archetype pins. I know a few people who make enamel pins and sell them and things like that, so if there's any interest in that, like, hit me up and I will clock the interest and start looking into it. Like, I'd really freaking love, like, really, this is fancy, like, dream upon dream stuff. I would love a deck of cards with this emblem in a foil color scheme and, like, silver foiled edging. Like, give this color scheme a little bit of a holographic edge to it on the back of the card. I would love that. I would love enamel pins. I'm not an enamel pin person, but I would love to, like, have them for people to buy and rep themselves and rep their characters. So that dovetails into the last, like, big future dream plan. Kickstarter, maybe? I'm not saying any announcements. Do not take this the wrong way. It is but a dream inside a dream at this point. But some of the thoughts I've had have been a Kickstarter for, like, an enhanced edition. You know? Physical copies. You know, a physical limited run, because honestly, this game, specifically this file, really, is built to be digital. This is built to be a digital reference set through and through, because I mainly use digital notes in my games. I want it to be usable digital because the one thing you can't do with the book is quick search or quick tab between things. That is the benefit of this over all else, is it cuts down time spent searching through notes. but I kind of really would love a physical book too. I'm not gonna lie. And of course, like, the main thought there is, of course, I'd include a code for the PDF too. So you get both. But yeah, Kickstarter plans in the future, maybe. We'll see how much interest there is in it. Back to my my chatting screen. Gosh, I hope you all enjoy it. I will be looking into casting for that Twitch show eventually. First, I have to learn how to put together an overlay for a multicam capture first. That's kind of a thing I need to know ahead of time. I have a high learning curve ahead of me. But I hope you'll join me for the ride? Question mark? But yeah, I think we're gonna consider that the end of the night for me. My voice is dying. I've gone like 15 minutes over time. Thank you to everyone who's reviewed it. Thank you to everyone who's bought it. Thank you to everyone who joined in chat. It was so exciting getting to talk to you all. If any of you want to talk more, hit me up in DMs on Twitter, find me on Discord. Please give me excuses to geek out about this. Tell me your ideas. Talk to me about world building using Aether. Talk to me about like building creatures and building lore and all that stuff. Ask me questions. Ask me questions. If any of you saw the stuff I had to put up with on my first promotional tweet with the artwork on this, you'll know the one thing you can do to meaningfully engage with somebody about their stuff on the internet is ask them questions about their stuff. I don't even know if that's considered an inside joke or not at this point. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you. I hope you love it. No, don't link a video to another channel. Man, who'd have thought that that's not meaningful engagement? Self-promo when it's not called for ain't meaningful engagement. Alright. We're gonna cut that, though. I can't help but laugh about it. Oh, hold on. Sin, why are you stopping me? Did I do something? Did I not do something? Hello? Hi? It is meaningful engagement. Because Sin has a very iconic voice when he says hello. Oh, okay, so we're gonna tell this story. We're gonna tell this story before I go because I find it hilarious. Okay, so first time I promo art on Twitter. Alright? And this is a story not all of you know yet. I have friends in chat who know this story, but like, you don't all know this. You don't all know the real funny behind this. So, I promo, right? And I don't, specifically, my problem with it was I didn't ask for someone else to promo on it. It was just Aether promo. Guy shows up on the thread and posts a link to his podcast, and he says, if you're not using a D12 as a core mechanic in your system, you've missed an opportunity. Listen to this podcast to find out why. Glasses push. It was a very well actually statement when I look back at it. And of course we got into it a little bit. And well, first off, he accuses me of thinking I can control the internet and so on and so forth. But the real funny bit here, I don't know what the permit does. Sorry, I'm not familiar with all of my chat commands yet, so. Oh, so that's what that does. Wonderful. Yeah, if you need to post a link, I guess ask, because now I know the command to do that. I'm still new at this. So yeah, that's the thread. You can go read all that stuff. The hilarious part about this is back when before Aether became a card game, it was a dice game. And when it was a dice game, it had what I was calling a fate die, which was a d12, which would determine whether you rolled a triumph or a tragedy and got extra advantages or disadvantages. I mean, he was really only one edition behind the playtest material. Thank you for the follow, Digiwatt. I appreciate it. Oh, and Flow Morpheus Slow followed as well. Sorry, I missed your notification. Yeah, the sheer irony of, like, this game initially did have D12s as a very prominent die, and then he rolled up with that is so funny to me. I take so much joy in that tomfoolery. But thank you for joining, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed my story time before I go and crash. Go find the game, go check if there's community copies left. I am immediately going to go check if any more sales have happened, because I know Irene bought a copy, and I will go adjust community copies as normal. Also, not gonna lie, if you just message me and be like, hey, there's no community copies but I can't afford the game, I will probably be cool and just give one to you, on the promise that you go buy it eventually when you can afford it. Of course. Like, just hit me up. If you want eyes on this game, I will let it happen. I do not have a competitive spirit. I'm not trying to hide or hoard any secrets. I will give you everything you need to play this and more. So just let me know. Thank you, everyone. But we're gonna call that a night. I am exhausted. I'll be back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Probably... I'm doing a Dishonored playthrough. I'm also doing some Hades. I think I'm going to do some Dishonored tomorrow. So if you want to join me for playing one of my old favorites, come hang out. We'll chat some more. Tell me about your thoughts and plans for an Aether game. Bounce ideas off me. Ask questions. I love talking while I play games. So I hope you all had a good evening. Good night, and I'll talk to you all later, I guess.